Hey there. Thanks for tuning in to watch this video on turning self-help learning into self-help doing. It's Saturday afternoon as I record this, and we have just gotten home from Coach's pitch, baseball for Michael, and we are getting ready to go to Book of Mormon. So I'm super excited about that. This is actually the third time that I'm recording this video. First time I recorded it live on Facebook, but I had some technical difficulties and the replay wasn't very good. And the second time I recorded it without my sound connected. So fun times. I am excited to record it again. Fortunately, this is one of my favorite topics, and I think this will be the best recording yet. So let's get into it. Thanks so much for taking the time to tune in and watch. And I am really passionate about self-help. You can call it what you like and what you're most comfortable with. Some people prefer personal growth, self-development, personal transformation. We're really all talking about the same thing. I think of myself as a bit of a self-help junkie. I love to read self-help books. I love the self-help section of the bookstore. I love podcasts on personal growth and personal development. I spent 7 years teaching in that personal growth, personal development, emotional intelligence space. Loved it. And of course, I love doing the same thing as a coach. So I'm very much in this self-help world and I love it. And I want to tell you why I love it. I love it because self-help and all of the resources related to it are tools to help us manage our minds and direct our brains in a way that helps us get the most out of our lives and have the biggest impact on our thinking and help us achieve our goals and set goals and visions of what's possible. And we don't learn a lot of that in traditional education. And so these resources that fall into that self-growth, self-help category are frequently the resources that we use to learn those tools, those strategies. And I believe that learning to manage your mind and learning to get the most out of your brain power and learning to enjoy your life and create a future that you want is the most powerful thing you can learn to do. And so these resources are tools. Now, I'll be the first to say they're not all created equally, and different tools are going to resonate with different people based on what your challenges are, based on what your goals are, based on what your interests are. And self-help comes in lots of formats. We can get this information out of books, from podcasts, from articles, from videos, from workshops. So there's lots of different formats you can try. And I encourage people to try out different things until they find something that resonates with them. For myself, I love workshops, but those are generally sort of the most, the hardest to come by and the most expensive. And so I also listen to a lot of podcasts, especially when I drive and when I walk. And I love to read the books, especially as part of my morning routine and part of my evening routine. And so those are my primary formats. I certainly do consume through some video, but I'm mostly just listening to videos. So see what works for you, see what you like to find a format that works for you. If this is something that you're interested in, and if self-growth and personal development is something that's important to you. So I do love it. I think the resources are really valuable and provide us education outside of the traditional modes of education, but in an area that I think is of the utmost importance. I can look and I can see how my mind and how my brain and how my attitude and how my outlook have changed as a result of some of the resources that I have used. My journey with self-help has been long. It's been over many years. I would say probably the first thing I remember is when I took the Myers-Briggs for the first time. That was like I learned so much from that. And that was in college. I was freshman year of college, maybe sophomore year. I don't remember. And I also actually remember and still have the first self-help book I ever bought. And it was called, are you ready? I have it. Living Successfully with Screwed Up People. And I remember I was traveling for work. I was a little bit unhappy. I was a lot unhappy in my job. I was struggling to work for the boss that I had. And I found this in an airport and I bought it. That was at least 15 years ago. And the funny thing about this is when I picked Sean up from the airport in March, I had a little bit of time to kill while he was going through customs. And I noticed the bookstore, they still sell this book. You can still buy Living Successfully with Screwed Up People at the airport bookstore. It has a different cover, but otherwise, yeah, same book. So I started reading about and learning about these resources a long time ago. And I would say for the first probably 7 years maybe of reading self-help, it was really what I call the self-help consumption stage of the journey. And what I mean by that is when we consume self-help, it's the just kind of passively listening or reading through it, almost more for entertainment. It's interesting, it's a little bit motivating. But at the end of the day, when we're finished with the episode or we're finished with the book, we put it back on the shelf and we kind of forget about it. We don't do much with it. We enjoy it while we're listening or while we're reading, and then we put it aside and move on with our day, kind of the same way we were before. And, that's fine. This is actually, I would say, how it begins for most people. Self-help books actually tend to be pretty fun to read. The authors of the popular books tend to be pretty funny. They're good storytellers. They're good at taking some of the theory and putting it into real-world examples. So these books can be really motivating, really inspiring, and really fun to read. And we call that edutainment, where we're really listening or reading something that is of educational value and we're doing it kind of for entertainment, right? So that is when we're in the consuming mode. And if that's where you are, that's awesome. That means you're building your interest, you're building your pot of resources, you're kind of getting into that place. One of the things I like to work with people is moving from kind of self-help consuming into the self-help learning and self-help doing. Okay, so when we start the learning process, that's when we no longer just read it and put it away. We spend a little bit more time with it so that we can embed the knowledge in our own minds, so that we can see how the theories apply to us. We can see how knowing this information might benefit us. We remember the information beyond the moment that we're reading it. And so that is kind of the second phase of the kind of journey with self-help. And so with the learning, my best tips for embedding your self-help learning is one I call learning through reflection. So when you read self-help, only read for like 10 minutes at a time, and then take a break to reflect on what you just learned, to think about how it could apply to you, and maybe even think about a time in the past, and if you'd known this information then, how you might have responded differently. So it's practicing the information in your head. That's a great way to start to learn and embed the information. Many of us, when we read, we just want to get through the content. We want to get to the end of the book. But with self-help, we want to take the time with the book and break it up into the smaller chunks so that we really can learn it and retain it. So we know what the information is. Another great way to learn the information is to teach it to somebody else or to speak it out with somebody else, where you kind of share what you've learned, put it into your own words, and reflect it that way. Teaching tends to be a pretty powerful form of learning. And I really love that. And then also just discussing. So maybe having a partner or a friend and you read the books together. And when you do that, you can, check in at regular intervals, discuss what you've read, think about how it applies and how it shows up. These are all really good ways to retain the information, to help them stick with you longer so they can start to impact kind of your perspective, how you make sense of challenges, and maybe even how you show up. Because once we start to learn these theories and reflect on how they show up for us, then we can start to, our behavior may start to shift a little bit in the moments where some of these theories might apply. So we're going to learn it. We're going to learn through reflection. We're going to maybe learn through discussion and maybe even through teaching. Those are some of my favorite ways. Of course, I taught this stuff for like 7 years, so I love teaching it. I can't get enough of that. And now I use it a lot in coaching and teaching it as a coach, as we build these skills and resources. So that's a little bit around the learning. The other thing I would say about embedding the learning, and this probably kind of crosses a gap between both the learning and the doing, is I really like to continuously go back to the books that have really had an impact on me or that really resonated with me. So I actually try not to, if a book was really powerful for me, I try not to put it back on the shelf and just forget about it. So what I do is I will go back through a book. Sometimes I do this the first time through, sometimes I do it a second time through, and I put tabs on the pages or on the thoughts that I really thought were really helpful and I really want to make sure I remember. Because this is a lot of information, right? There's a lot in this book, and there are certain things that just really hit home with me that I wanted to remember. So I put tabs on those so that I can easily flip to them. And I'll leave a book. So this is You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero. It's one of my favorites. I find it very inspiring, very motivating. It helped me with some mindset shifting. And I'll leave it on my desk for like 30 days. And every day I'll open it and I'll just flip to a page, either a page with a tab or just a random page in the middle. So if I do that today, I love, this is one of my favorite quotes of all time. If you're serious about changing your life, you'll find a way. If you're not, you'll find an excuse. Right? And so just remembering that, like thinking about that, how is that showing up? How might my clients benefit from hearing that? Like, where might that show up for me? And I just do that. I do it on a regular basis every day for a month, and then I'll rotate the book. And this is how I continue to learn from books that I read in the past. Okay, so that's one of my tools. It works really well for me. I like to tab it up, and I like to flip back regularly to continuously embed the learning. I know it sounds probably like a lot of work, but it is work. I mean, this is, I feel like self-help learning is not that different from the way we learned in school. It's just that we don't, it's just the topic is very different. We still need to learn it. We need to reflect on it. We need to see how it works for us. We need to see it in real life so that we can make it true for us and we can use it to achieve our goals. All right. So the third step is going all the way to self-help doing, putting the learning into action. Because when we put it into action is when we get real results. One of the examples I like to use is if you learn about gratitude and you read a book about it, you learn about it, you appreciate the value that it has, you understand how it can rewire your brain, so you've learned it, but you don't do it, you don't get the benefit from it, right? Knowing about gratitude, appreciating that it's valuable, it's good, it's a starting point, but we don't get the value of it until we do it. So we need to put the learning into the action in order to get the results that we are searching for when we pick up a self-help, self-growth, self-development book. Okay, so how do we build on the learning? My favorite thing is to create an action plan. And it doesn't have to be complicated. I just read Habits of a Happy Brain, and in it, there were some great exercises that we can do to actually produce more happy neurotransmitters. And one of those exercises was to celebrate something every day to increase the amount of dopamine in your brain. And so as an action plan, I added to my morning routine just to write down one thing from the day before that I accomplished or that I am proud of or that is a step on the way to achieving the goals that I'm currently working on. Okay, so that was my action plan, is to actually do that every day. And when you read a book or you go through a resource, I recommend just picking one or two things to start doing on a daily basis, whether it is a gratitude practice, whether it's a daily planning practice, whether it's setting a daily intention. Whatever it is from whatever you're learning from right now that's going to help you put into practice what you have learned. So creating that action plan. I heard a while ago that if there's something you can do and it takes 2 minutes or less, just do it. So if there's something that's really intriguing you and you really want to put it into practice, do it in the moment. Do it when you're learning about it. Once you've decided, take that first step right away, because the first time is always the hardest, right? Getting over that initial step of just doing it can be challenging. So maybe in that moment when you read about the gratitude practice, as just kind of using that as an ongoing example, you reflect on it, you say, yeah, I think that could help me. And in that moment, you just do it. You just write down 3 things you're grateful for. For a while, I was working on abundance. And so every day I would write down 3 ways I felt abundant that day. So and the way I start that is by starting, right? Just by actually doing it the first time is how you get started. And so don't wait for the perfect moment to implement. Just go for it. That's going to get you into that practice much more quickly. Okay. So once you've decided what you're going to do, I highly recommend finding an accountability partner, somebody who's either doing it with you or somebody that you can check in with so that you know that someone else is supporting you on the journey, especially at first. It can be so helpful to have somebody checking in. With my clients, they can check in every single day. I want them to check in and just let me know they did the thing that they're working on. Of course, everybody's plan is a bit personalized, but every day I want to hear, got it, did it, or didn't do it. And we can work through that. But having an accountability partner is really, really helpful. All right. So those are some things. Make an action plan. Take immediate action. Just do something right away and find an accountability partner who will support you on this journey. And the other thing is, for me, I had a very long self-help consumption phase. And then, as I started teaching emotional intelligence and doing a lot more of that, the implementation started happening more quickly. But I certainly had my biggest growth in this area when I hired my first coach. So if you're ever looking for a quicker route to implementing some of this stuff, or if you've read a lot of self-help and listened to a lot or watched a lot, and you're still not really where you want to be with your practice, give me a call. Or shoot me a note. If you go to my website, laurabuckleycoaching.com, you can actually just set up a call with me and we can get you going in that right track. So you can implement the self-help, turn it into doing, turn it into action, and then start getting those results that you are dreaming about. They are available to you. I truly believe that. So let's get you going in the right direction. I want to hear from you. Leave me a comment and let me know what resonated and if there's anything else that you would like support with. You never know, it might be my next video, and I would be certainly happy to do that. So I hope you all have a fantastic weekend or whatever day you're watching this. And you know what? I'm pretty sure this actually was the best version. So 3rd time's a charm. Happy to have done it. And I will talk to you again soon. Bye.